Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to say goodbye to the BMW M3 Touring. No, it's not going out of production anytime soon, but this might just be the last time I have the chance to drive it, because the car just got a facelift. I'm presenting it to you, and most of the time I don't get a second chance to drive these cars once I did my presentation with them. And chances are that in the future, with the Neue Klasse platform and the future M3, we won't have such a combination on offer, which is a 3-liter straight 6 under the hood with the touring body style. I'm not sure, I mean, the signs are not that great. We've seen interviews of BMW officials saying that they are trying to keep the ICE alive for the next generation. Then there are some reports saying that the Neue Klasse will be completely electric, so the upcoming M3 will only be electric. Then there is another official coming out saying, you know what, we're gonna do a ICE version and an electric version. We just don't know yet. But if you're looking to buy a high performance family car like this BMW M3 Touring, I think this is your chance to get one while you still can. So right next to me, you will notice the facelifted BMW M3 Competition Touring, and I think this is one of the best cars BMW makes these days. I think this could very well be the best M car BMW makes these days. Now, talking about this, I noticed, and I think a lot of you also noticed, that BMW changed the way it's making cars recently, and right now I think its range is made up of cars that have the wrong badge on them. So to be more precise, I think the M5 should have been called the M7. This one, the M3 and M4, should have been called the M5 and the M6, whereas the BMW M2 is the modern day M3. That's mainly because of the way they drive, the weight they have, the size they have, and of course the specs they have. So getting back to this car, what is it? Well, as you probably already know, it's the high performance version of the BMW 3 Series Touring. It is the first M3 Touring ever made, and this is the facelift of the first generation. Not a lot has changed in terms of design. This is still a great looking car, and I know some people have been hating on the front grille of this car ever since it was launched, but I have to say I got used to it and I absolutely love it right now. I can't really say the same thing about other cars in BMW's range, but if we're talking about the M3 and M4, and I think the front end is absolutely brilliant. What changed on the facelift are basically the headlamps. That's about it. If we're talking about design, we're going to talk about the technical side of things as well. So the headlamps have now a different DRL signature. They are, as you can see, resembling arrows. I don't think this is a good idea, but then again, I'm not BMW management. I think the previous generation looked better, but this is the direction all BMW models are heading into, and I think it's only normal to have a cohesive design language. So yeah, we have different DRLs. The shape remained roughly the same. This car has the Shadowline package, which makes the interior of the headlamps black. Cars like this, the M3 Competition, come with adaptive LEDs as standard, and that's about it. The front end otherwise remained roughly the same. Now this car has the optional carbon fiber bits you can get on this car, like over here on the front bumper, you know, the side mirrors and the rear bumper. And of course we have to talk about the elephant in the room, this color, which is called, I'm going to read it because I don't want to get it wrong, Twilight Purple. And I think this is the perfect color for this car. It looks absolutely marvelous. If I were to buy myself one of these, this is the color I would go for. Maybe Toronto Red would also be close, but I think this is absolutely perfect. All cars like this one come with a standard black roof. If you wanted to, optionally, you can get the roof in the same color. Let me know in the comment section if you prefer it this way or maybe in the same color overall. I love the fact that we have a huge spoiler at the top of the roof at the back, and I don't really love the wheels on this car. 19-inch up front, 20-inch in the back. This is a standard dimension. I think a black setup would have worked better with this color. But overall, I think it looks absolutely amazing. And since we're talking about the design, the rear end hasn't changed that much, right? It's not like on the M4 where we have those new fancy taillights with laser. This one remained roughly the same, but I love the way it looks around the back. It's massive, it's imposing. Love those big tailpipes. You know, we have the carbon fiber diffuser over there, and I think it looks absolutely brilliant. So what's hiding under the hood? Well, if you're a fan of BMW Motorsport, you probably already know that this is the S58. It has this nameplate because it's an engine developed by the Motorsport division, and it is based, of course, on the B58. Well, to be more precise, I think it's more related to the B57, which is the diesel. That's because if you look at the bore and the stroke of the engine, it's closer to the B57 than the B58. So the engine block seems closer to the one used on the diesel. But other than that, yes, it's a 3-liter straight 6 petrol engine which has 2 turbos. They are monoscroll turbos. There's one attached to the first 3 cylinders and then one again in the back attached for the next 3 cylinders. They work in parallel and they are monoscroll, as I said. It uses direct injection. It uses a completely different cooling setup. It has a air-cooled intercooler. It has 2 air intakes, as you can see, right? 2 air filters, one for one turbo, one for the other. So there's a lot that's going on under here that's different compared to the B58. The most important thing you're gonna care about is the fact that this one hasn't been hybridized in any way, right? So we have a pure ICE under the hood of this car. Now, you will probably be also very curious about what changed on the facelift. Well, not a lot. We only have like 20 extra horsepower in the competition X-Drive models. So right now you have about 4 different power stages for this engine, depending on the car you go for. So there's the base M3 M4 with 480 horsepower. There is the competition M3 M4, including the touring, which has 510 horsepower. And then there's the competition MX drive, which has all-wheel drive. These, like the one we're presenting right here, have gotten 20 extra horsepower, and now they have 530 horsepower and 650 Newton meters of torque. And then there's the CS models, which have 550 horsepower, but the only difference between all of these engines is the turbo pressure, right? It's a software thing. This version has a pressure of 1.8 bar, whereas the CS has 2.1 bar, if I'm not mistaken, right? So yeah, we have all the latest technology, direct injection, 350 bar, Valvetronic. So everything you need to know is in here. It's a high revving engine. That's why the different bore and stroke compared to the B58, right? And it runs really hot most of the time. When you enter into sport mode, it cools off really fast for better performance. So yeah, that's something I wanted to point out. Now, since we're talking about an M car, right, you can notice that there's been a lot of body strengthening applied here. So you only have to open the hood. You'll notice this strut bar over here, this one, right, stiffening up the front end. There's more under the car. There's more done in the back of the car. The suspension is a multi-arm suspension, right? Double wishbone up front, 5-arm multi-link in the back. We have adaptive suspension as standard on these cars, you know, with a with active dampers, and everything has been stiffened up compared to a regular M3. And you can feel it whenever you just set off. You can also feel that the geometry of the front wheels has been changed because this car has a worse turning radius compared to a normal 3 Series Touring. Furthermore, we also have the ZF 8 HP gearbox, right, the 8-speed gearbox on this car, and we are talking about the X-Drive version, which means we have all-wheel drive, which can be decoupled to turn this car into a rear-wheel drive car. You have a selectable DSC controller in up to 10 stages. There's a lot of things you can do on this car. Let's hop inside and talk about the interior for a bit. Since the M3 Touring has something the M5 Touring doesn't, we're gonna talk about that first, which is this, the separate opening for the tailgate. The M5 Touring doesn't have this anymore, and we have about 500 liters of space over here. I think that's going to be enough for most people. I'm not gonna delve into it too much, right? Let's hop inside and let's talk about the interior. Let's start with the rear bench. We have the merino leather over here with white leather, right? Looks pretty good. There isn't a lot of room in the back, so you know, do what you will with that info. And these are the optional 5,000 euro carbon seats. They look amazing, but I would not buy them. The reason for that is that while they look amazing, I love the lit up emblem over here for the M3. They look amazing, but they are not comfortable. And getting in and out is a pain because of this. The side bolster is very high. So whenever you get in or out, you have to basically jump over it. And I think this is gonna crack in time. I don't know how well it's going to last, but it's very uncomfortable to get in and out of it. But the seats are brilliant if you want to have the best side supporting seats, you know, but I would prefer the standard ones. So let's hop inside. The build quality is great. The materials are great. We have leather over here, leather over here, leather over here. So no issues whatsoever. There's a big step up compared to a 3 Series. You have leather on the dashboard, right? Everything in between. We have my favorite gear shift lever in the industry right now. This one, which disappeared from the M5. We have that small knob on the M5. But this one replicates, you know, a traditional manual gear shift lever. You know, when you do like this, you go into reverse. You go like this, you go into drive or sport mode. You have a park button over here. You can adjust the brutality of the gear shift using this indicator over here. So yeah, this is my favorite gear shift lever in the industry right now. We do have buttons for everything you possibly need over here, which is yet again a good thing because we have physical buttons, right? So you can press on M mode and adjust the driving mode you are using right now. You can choose between road, sport and track, or you can press the setup button and adjust just about everything you want in this car, including the traction control, but first you have to turn it off, right? So you're better off just configuring your buttons, M1 and M2. You have shortcuts over here on the steering wheel and adjusting them on the fly once you realize your perfect setup. Now for the facelift, we have a flat bottom steering wheel, and you can also get the steering wheel with an Alcantara finish. I don't know if I would. Let me know if you would in the comment section. And this is the instrument cluster, which is pretty good, but I would still prefer round dials over here. So since we have screens, BMW, please allow us to configure them with round dials. So yeah, that's about it. Not a lot to talk about on the facelift. Let's go and drive this car. As you probably noticed, yes, we are on a mountain road, which most of the time can prove to be quite enjoyable. Unfortunately, this particular mountain road doesn't allow me to actually exploit this car's capabilities to the max for a number of reasons. The most important one being that the running surface has been practically destroyed in the past few months, and there are a number of potholes around. And since we have pretty big wheels on this car, I'm not gonna try and risk anything. So yes, I did drive it in a sportier fashion earlier on a better piece of tarmac, and yes, I did notice that this car is still quite unbelievable. Now, I did drive the BMW M3 Touring last year in a pre-facelift version, and what I can say is that there aren't a lot of differences between them. Now, if you're expecting to feel those extra 20 horsepower, I gotta say you'd have to be pretty damn good at it, because my bet is you won't actually feel that power difference. But this car definitely remains a scalpel in the right hands. I'm gonna lower my window to try to get some of that engine noise inside the cabin. The problem is while this car drives brilliantly and has plenty of power and it's very agile and so on and so forth, the main issue I have with it is the fact that it no longer has an exhilarating sound. Now, when you drive it, you do hear a lot of engine noise, but some of it is pumped through the speakers. So for the people outside, there won't be that much of a wow factor. There won't be a lot of pops and bangs like older models used to have, right? So that's a shame, but I understand why that is, because BMW, like most car makers today, has to follow a very strict rule book regarding emissions, and this car has an OPF filter. The first production models managed to get away without an OPF filter, so those will be a bit more enticing, but this one, you just don't really hear that engine, right? It doesn't sound that exhilarating. Now, as for the driving part, this thing is absolutely amazing. So it tips the scale at 1940 kilos, which would make it pretty heavy, right? But you don't really feel it. The suspension has been set up in such a way that it is both comfortable and very stiff in certain situations. So yeah, you will notice that this car is stiffer than a regular 3 Series. But it's not as stiff as you would probably imagine. You could probably live with it day by day easily, but if you have a bad back, I wouldn't recommend getting these seats. As I said, they are quite stiff. It makes the whole getting in and out of the car process very hard. So yeah, I would probably go for the standard ones, even though those are heavier, so they will add to the overall weight of the car, and even though they don't have the same amount of side support like these. But on the plus side of things, they can be ventilated, whereas these can only be heated, and that's it. So, you know, choose carefully, if you will. But this car drives brilliantly. So the rear axle will want to oversteer all the time. No matter what kind of driving mode you're on, it will want to oversteer. It's quite obvious that BMW set this car up to make it as rear-wheel drive biased as possible. So basically, this X-Drive system is mainly a rear-wheel drive setup, and it has a multi-clutch system right in the middle that can send power to the front wheels as well. But overall, the car is a rear-wheel drive one, and it will send power to the front axle in certain situations. Now, if you want to turn it into a rear-wheel drive, a pure rear-wheel drive car, you can do that. As I said, you can turn the DSC off, and this will become a rear-wheel drive car, but it is quite dangerous. So you do that at your own peril. If you don't want to do that, you can keep it in four-wheel drive mode, and it will still oversteer. I never noticed any kind of understeer. The car never felt understeery to me, so it felt planted, and it felt like the front end just wants to hook while the rear end wants to slide around. So it's very nice, very nicely set up. The gearbox, even though it's a torque converter, responds brilliantly to your inputs, and the shifts can be quite aggressive as well. So that's something I wanted to point out too. The brake pedal feels great. It's well blended. It feels natural. So you have a very good feedback through the pedal from what's happening, you know, with the discs and everything. I am going downhill now. I didn't overuse the brake. I didn't heat them up too much to start to get them fading so that I would have any issues with them. So overall, I think this is a very good setup. This is a brilliantly driving car. The steering is also different compared to a regular 3 Series. We have the M Servotronic over here, which basically means that you have a variable steering ratio. It's quite fast too, but you know, since we have a different elastokinematic setup and a different geometry for the front suspension compared to the regular 3 Series, the driving of this car around town will be trickier because you have a bigger turning radius. So that might be an issue, but you know, you got to sacrifice some things to make this car drive a lot better. So at the end of the day, there are very few cars that can stack up to this one in terms of dynamics. And I'm talking about BMWs as well, not just Audis and Mercedes models, right? So if we're to compare this car to its rivals, we're talking about the RS5, you know, in various body styles, and of course the Mercedes C63 AMG. The C63 has a 2-liter plug-in hybrid setup, and it has been a failure so far. Even Mercedes admitted, and they said that, you know what, we made a mistake, so we're gonna stop using these plug-in hybrid setups for 63 models for our customers. It's obvious they don't want them. That's an official statement from Mercedes, and the C63 cannot hold its own against this car in no department. Then there's the RS5. I didn't drive it yet. I want to, but I have a sneaky suspicion that that one too won't be able to keep up with this car. If you did drive one, please let me know of your thoughts between them in the comment section below. Now, if you normally watch my videos, you probably noticed that there's been a change of pace in this particular video, and I think that's natural considering the car we are driving. We're talking, after all, about a special car. I know there's a number of them on the road today, but I still think the M3 Competition Touring MX Drive, whatever, is a special car because of the way it drives, because of the way it looks, so on and so forth. Now, what you should probably notice, and the reason why this video has a different tune, is exactly this character, because I skipped over the highway section of this video, because that's where I find this car the most unpractical and most boring, right? That's where it will shine the least. And the reason I'm saying that is because this car truly shines on B roads, truly shines on twisty roads, where you can actually enjoy the powertrain, the drivetrain, the suspension as it was meant to be enjoyed, which means at higher speeds. If you're driving on the highway, you're simply going fast, right? Yes, this car can go fast, but if you want to abide by the speed limit, you're not going to be enjoying it that much. It takes just a bit over 3.6 seconds to get to the speed limit on the highway, right? So you enjoy it for what? 3 seconds? And then on the highway, you're going to notice how loud it is, because this is an M car with less sound deadening compared to other models and so on and so forth. You're going to notice how stiff the suspension is. You're going to notice how much road noise is coming in, right? So I tested it on the highway, and it averaged 80 decibels on my decibel meter, which is pretty high, right? It's one of the highest test results I've gotten this year since I started testing my cars using that device. So it's not exactly a grand tourer like the M5 is, which proved to be very quiet and very comfortable overall. This is a stiff, fast car, and it's supposed to be used in that sort of an environment, on twisty roads, on the track, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I find that it's actually more enjoyable to drive this car around town. And the reason I'm saying that is simply because around town, yes, you will notice the suspension once again, because you're going to be hitting potholes, you know, tram lines. It's going to be hard to park sometimes, you know, get out of certain parking spots, because the turning radius is bigger on this car compared to a 3 Series, for example. You'll notice how bad the roads are because of the suspension and the seats, but in this particular configuration, you will get a lot of attention. And that's part of why we buy special cars. Otherwise, we'd all be driving Corollas, right? So we'd all be driving Toyotas if we weren't looking for something different, something special. And only somebody looking for something special would buy this color, right, in this combo. And it's definitely a head turner. Just before I started recording, before I did that, I just washed the car. So I was at the red light, and somebody on the left lane honked at me and took a picture.
And after he did that, I just saw a hand out the window doing this. He was implying that this is the perfect spec, and I kind of agree. If you're gonna buy a special car like this, I think you should give it a special color, right? Because it deserves a special treatment. I'm tired of all these German cars being painted gray, black, white, you know, all these non-colors. Give them some blush, make them stand out somehow, especially if we're talking about M cars, right? Even red seems to be kind of bland right now, or blue. Give them a color like this, Isle of Man green, you know, Sao Paulo yellow. I love these colors. I love the fact that BMW M is offering them on their cars, because they really make them stand out. And life is bleak enough already. Life is full of tones of gray, right? Black, dark things all around us, you know. It's nice to have some color in your life. So yeah, this car will get a lot of attention, especially around town, where you can notice the reactions from people on the sidewalks, you know, people at red lights, and everyone around you. On the highway, or maybe on B roads, you won't have time to notice people staring at you, you know, or giving you a thumbs up and stuff like that. You also get to, I don't know, enjoy the car in the sense that you can rev it a bit, but once again, if you want to abide to the speed limits, you won't be able to enjoy the M3 for long periods of time, but maybe a couple of seconds at one time. Everything I said up until now shouldn't be a surprise, especially if you're familiar with BMW's lineup, BMW's way of doing things. You probably knew before I published this review that the M3 is one of the best cars they make these days. What will surprise you though, and what surprised me as well, is or was how efficient this car turned out to be. Now, I did my usual test with it, and what I should point out from the get-go is the fact that the numbers you're gonna hear are for a toned down driving style, right? They are not for, they shouldn't be taken as a, as they are, they shouldn't be considered set in stone, because as it happens with a lot of these high performance cars, the fuel consumption will depend on how heavy your right foot is, because this car can be very efficient, but it can also be very thirsty. So, you know, it will depend on how you drive it. But the numbers I got were for the first category, you know, very efficient. I kept it, you know, legal, a couple of squirts here and there, and maybe some spirited driving on the twisty roads yesterday, but that was about it. So what did I get? Well, around town I saw an average of about 16 liters per 100 kilometers covered, and I think that's amazing for a car like this. Then on the highway, the average was 10.8. Let's round it up to 11, right? Keeping it at 130 kilometers an hour, which is once again pretty darn good. And then on B roads, the average was 8 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which is absolutely amazing for a car with 530 kilometers an hour, 530 horsepower, and that weighs about 2 tons, right? So yeah, I am thoroughly impressed by how efficient this drivetrain is. Now, if you don't believe me, and you might be thinking, you know what, this guy is lying, he just did his best to do some hypermiling in this car and so on and so forth, let me show you something. Now, a lot of BMWs have this trip computer, which shows you the values from factory, right? So ever since the car left the factory, it kept a counter going, right? And this one shows this. The car right now has 10,350 kilometers on the clock, and it has an average fuel consumption of 13.6 liters per 100 kilometers covered. So even that is an amazingly good figure in my book. And mind you, this is a press car, right? So everybody is abusing it. It was also used as a safety car at a local competition over here in motorsport. So it was properly abused over time. And yet, this isn't the number it returned overall. So yeah, I am more than happy with the results in this regard. So that said, let's pull over and let's try to come up with some conclusions regarding the BMW M3 Touring Competition facelift. So what's the takeaway then? Well, it's enough to see one of these cars on the road to be impressed by it, by its presence, by its stance, by its design. You don't really have to drive one to understand just how good it drives. It shows you by the way it lines up the road, right? So it's easy to understand why everyone wants a piece of this BMW M technology. And I'm pretty sure that in their mind, a lot of BMW 320d owners think they are driving one of these, or that they are driving one of these cars as uncles, I don't know, nephews, cousins, distant cousins, or anything like that. And to some extent, yes, they do share some of the DNA, but this is the pinnacle of what BMW can offer today. And it's easy to understand why everybody wants a BMW. It's true that not every single BMW drives like this, but it gets you in that family to some extent, right? So it's easy to judge people simply because they want something like this. But after you experience it, you kind of understand why. In my book, this car will go into the history books, to repeat myself. I think it's a marvelous achievement of engineering and design and performance and efficiency, a combination that you rarely see these days. Chip in the fact that you can tune them quite extensively with very simple parts and little to no effort, and you get a recipe for a car that is simply amazing in my book. Yes, I praised it a lot. There are some things I didn't like about it. I told you all about them, but overall, I would love to have one of these. And I'm so happy that I get to do this for a job. If BMW is looking, watching, please give me one of these for a longer period than a few days. And maybe, you know, a fuel card, but that's not mandatory. I can pay for the fuel, as I said, it's pretty efficient. So this has been my review of the BMW M3 Touring. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, drop them in the comment section below. And until next time, of course, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.